What is IFS and how can it help me?
Brannon, what's going on, man?
Not much. How's summer going?
It's it's going good. It's crazy how fast it goes.
You know,
You know?
I was just thinking that now that I bring that up, today is a special day. Do you know why today is a special day?
Oh no. I have no clue.
48 years.
That's today.
48 years, man.
Holy cow.
Yeah, they made it.
They beat all the odds.
God, yeah. Our parents have been married for 48 years today. Yeah.
Congrats, mom and dad.
Congratulations. we there's moments of bliss and moments of frustration, and
So
it's
somehow they
it's
got a marriage to survive the
it's
five
called
kids that we
marriage.
are.
Yeah, it's called marriage. So congrats to them.
That's huge.
Yeah, they survived us, man, for 48 years.
I know. Yeah.
You know what's weird? They've been married 48 years. Aren't you like 48 and a half years old?
Yeah, yeah. Wait, I think I'm under the gun in terms of timing, just barely.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Just I got to do the math. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a double life sentence.
yeah, what do you mean?
Well, usually life sentence is about 25 years. So they're almost
Oh,
they're almost there.
oh, interesting. They got a double life. That sounds so bad. We make marriage sound so fun.
I know, especially for me two guys who do marriage therapy all day.
Yeah.
So
But no, seriously, congrats to them. That's awesome.
yeah. Yeah, congrats, mom and dad. We love you guys. And seriously, good job on getting through everything that we have put you through.
Yeah.
So
So, all right, Tyler, should we dive in? We
let's
got a
go.
special guest here
Yeah,
with us
let's go
today.
for it. Why don't you introduce our guest, Brannon?
Yeah, so we have Lauren Claus with us today, and where do I even begin? She's actually I podcasted with her a couple times already over on my show. But I've worked with her for years now, and she's just an incredible therapist and somebody who helps people a lot. And she knows a lot about a lot of things, and one of those things is IFS. So we wanted her to come on and talk about IFS. So Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Um, so I, IFS, it's like we, we have all these like acronyms, DBT, IFS, ART, EMDR. It's like I think I think most people are like, what is that thing, that letter thing that you do? And now IFS has gotten its letters.
Mhm.
But a lot of times it's called parts work. But I think the name internal family systems, that's what IFS stands for, says a lot about what it actually is. But if you could just back up a little bit and just tell us a little bit, like, what is parts work? What is IFS?
Yeah, so lots of acronyms, of course. To put it simply, parts work is basically understanding and figuring out the emotions that you have and how they contribute to your actions, your behaviors, your thoughts, and how that formed as you've aged over time. So, like everyone has seen the typical movie Inside Out 2. That's exactly like IFS. I don't know if Pixar like got the textbook of IFS and like made a movie about it because it literally was like spot on to what it is. But it's figuring out your parts, figuring out your emotions, and it sounds weird, but it works. And you almost like befriend them and become more familiar with them, right? So like your angry, your sad part, your joy, your disgust, your resentment, your guilt, your shame, all of it lives within your body and contributes to who you are. But we also go throughout the day not really knowing what am I really feeling in this moment? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I showing up in this relationship in a way that doesn't work for me? And that is all related to our parts and how they're kind of working all together to keep us essentially like able to survive.
I think when people hear IFS or they hear the word parts work, everyone's kind of watched enough movies or kind of pop media to think of like split personality disorder, or they're worried that that's kind of what you're doing is actually splitting off different, like parts or personalities, and that's not necessarily right, Lauren. That's not what we're actually going for when we call it parts work.
No, and I sometimes give like this discretion to my clients of like it doesn't mean that you have DID. It's not like the movie Split. Like that's very different because that movie was like genuinely amazing but terrifying. It's very different. Like DID is very different from parts work, even though they seem very similar. It's entirely different. It's working more internal, whereas I feel like DID is like one and the same with your own identity, whereas parts work is meant to kind of sort through and figure out, okay, when do I feel angry in this moment and why do I feel that way, rather than like your whole identity changing to being like a different, different personality.
It's almost opposite. I mean, DID is just it's disassociating, and parts work is getting just very conscious
Yeah, very
of,
mindful.
yeah, very mindful and conscious of who you are and why you are the way you are. um it's really cool. Like we got to give Richard Schwartz credit. He's the guy that came up with IFS and parts work, and his main book is called No Bad Parts. um but Richard Schwartz or Michael Singer or Carl Jung. They all have this thing that they do that's really really cool, and I think it's kind of at the crux of parts work. And it's that you become the observer,
Mm.
and as you become the observer with no bias, with no, and that's one of the part, and we'll get into this, Lauren. One of the important parts of parts work is that you said it earlier, like how do I love my disgust, how do I love my guilt, how do I love my shame, or accept my disgust or shame or guilt, and yet do it in a neutral way where
Mhm.
you just observe it and you see it. Am I making any sense?
Yeah,
Is
you're
this,
right.
yeah? I mean, why is this so important?
I mean, it's important because, like, especially when you're going to therapy, right? And you're coming in saying, I feel really depressed, I'm struggling with my anxiety, or I got into a toxic relationship and I don't know what I'm doing, or, I have a poor relationship with my mom and I want it to be better. Like, all of that involves understanding the way that you feel in certain environments and how people are responding to your environment and then therefore how you're reacting, right? So every single day we're reacting with something that's going on in our stimulus and in our environment, even like right now, right? We're all reacting and absorbing information. And when we typically grow up and we become accustomed to our environment, our mind and our body kind of stop becoming like one, right? So our thoughts are all up here, and then our body is dealing with like the somatic, physical symptoms of what our environment is telling us. And it can feel really dysregulating. It can cause a lot of chaos. It can cause stress, and we don't feel regulated. And so we're more reactionary, we're more explosive, we're more willing to shut down and isolate ourselves. And therefore, that leads to negative and unhealthy coping. And it can even lead towards like addiction and stuff like that. But it's important because when we want to be one with ourselves and we want to grow every single day and we want to know, like, okay, this is who I want to be and this is how I want to respond in certain situations, you have to be aware about how your body is even taking in information and therefore how it's now responding. And it's important because that's literally what we do every second of every single day.
Mhm.
So it's us, essentially.
Yeah, Lauren, can you talk a little bit more about that process? People are probably listening and going, okay, so you said the word somatic, and that's kind of a bigger word that people who are listening to podcasts are hearing now, but probably don't fully understand what that means.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the somatic word means, and then how IFS accesses that with other parts of the treatment?
Yeah, yeah. So somatic simply means like physical. So let's take a really basic example of me personally. When I feel anxiety, I feel like like if you're on a roller coaster and then it drops, that sensation in your stomach. That's what I feel when have anxiety, right? So I've gotten to know my anxious part that whenever I feel that dropping sensation, something in my environment is making me be like, whoa, something doesn't feel right, something's off. What that person just said maybe bothers me. And then I'm ready to assess, okay, what is my body trying to tell me with this physical sensation? Now, if I didn't know that that's what my anxiety was, or what it was trying to tell me or warn me about, I'd be walking around having this like weird physical sensation in my body and trying to figure out, oh my God, what does this mean? What is this? Why do I feel this way? I don't like feeling this way. Like I'd be all in my head trying to figure out how do I get rid of feeling this rather than just simply acknowledging it. So if you think about like the bottom up or top down processing that we all learn in like psychology, basically, as your body is living as it is right now, it's taking all the stimulus and everything will hit your body physically at once and then very quickly will travel up to your brain for processing. So our body is always going to respond physically to some way in our environment and then it'll go towards our head to be like what's going on? How can I figure out am I a threat in this situation? Am I, not feeling safe at this time? So your body is giving you information constantly throughout the day in very physical ways, which is the word somatic. And IFS helps you figure out and connect that physical sensation to the emotion that you're feeling. And so it can help you have more emotional identification and then also emotional regulation.
You said there's my anxious part.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because that's kind of where the magic happens is
Mhm.
when you have that somatic response, and instead of fight or flight, you're
Mhm.
actually going up into your like frontal lobe and you're like, oh, interesting. Huh. You're like curious and compassionate with yourself of like, huh, I wonder where that's coming from or why that part is here right now. Hello, part. Love you. Let's give you a hug, see you, like right.
Yeah.
And then you can choose like where do you go from there? You see your
Yeah.
anxious part, then
Mhm.
what do you do?
And so yeah, once you feel it and you can acknowledge it and say, okay, I'm feeling anxious in this time. That's weird. I don't see anything maybe around in my environment that would make me feel anxious. Like I don't have direct evidence that I should be anxious in this moment, right? Sometimes our body just picks up things and would rather like us be warned than it actually be true. And so then I typically would respond and be like, okay, I can acknowledge that I'm feeling anxious. I don't have any evidence of why I should be anxious at this time. I can acknowledge my part, see if it kind of goes away. Because typically with parts work, the magical thing is when you acknowledge your emotion, it actually can subside because you're listening to it, right? You're listening to your body. The part's job is done. Its job is to warn you and to give you information. And therefore, since you've had the information, you can now decide, okay, if I don't feel a little bit more at ease and maybe in 5 minutes, maybe I should pick a coping skill that works for me. So maybe I want to go talk to a friend. Maybe I want to go outside. Maybe I want to go for a walk. Maybe I want to go exercise. Maybe I need to just sit down and watch some TV and be with myself, right? So it really looks like acknowledging what your body's trying to tell you, what part of you is present, seeing if that kind of like eases away, and then picking a coping skill. Or if we're talking in the sense where my anxious part is present and I'm able to understand, oh, I'm really anxious because I can see that this person's talking and they're kind of looking at me. And so maybe I'm nervous that they're talking about me, right? I can see that there's evidence of something I would be anxious about. And so therefore I can take that in and then I'm going to talk to that part of me. And that's where it sounds weird, is that we're talking to ourselves. But realistically, you're doing it all internally, right? So maybe I would need to talk to the part of me that's anxious that they're talking about me and say, well, what evidence do you have about that? If they're talking about you, is that really about you or is it more about them? Like, is there anything you need in this moment, right? Like, I'm gonna cope and talk with that part of me a little bit more if I'm able to see that there's something directly in my environment that's going to make me feel anxious.
I'm kind of getting this picture in my mind of, a bunch of different parts sitting around a campfire and something comes up and one part's like, "Oh my gosh, the thing's going to burn down the forest." And there's another part that's like, "Well, I can see why you're worried. Is there something really legitimate there?" And then that part's kind of like almost coaching the other part and they're kind of doing this like eventually you have a bunch of parts that are kind of doing this dance together
Yeah.
to live life according to, "Oh no, we're just sitting around a campfire right now and that's okay. Just come and enjoy it here." I think there's two words that kind of are coming up as you're talking, and I think you mentioned these already. When people think about this idea of dealing with their parts, we've kind of been conditioned that any of the parts that elicit a negative response or emotion are bad. We're trying to get rid of them. We try to kill them. We don't like to feel those things. And I think one of the places where it seems that some of the magic happens in IFS is that you learn to actually, instead of trying to kill it or avoid those negative like emotions or parts, you actually learn to meet those with curiosity and compassion and mindfulness. And in a sense, what you're trying to do is actually integrate those parts more fully into your whole being rather than trying to avoid or run from or kill, be angry at those parts.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can I give an example of this? I mean, I think and it sounds extreme, but we do this in our work a lot, Tyler, with, the addiction part where, people come into addiction recovery and they fight against their addiction
They
and
hate their addiction.
yeah, and their addiction will fight back. It will come back. They'll feel more shame. They'll feel more out of control because they're fighting that addiction. And if we stop for a minute, and we just say, "God, like this addiction part is doing a really good job at finding ways to soothe myself. It's doing a really good job at helping me feel okay when I feel intense emotions. Now, it causes me all kinds of consequences I don't want in my life, but look at this addiction part work. Like, this is a strong part that steps up for me quickly. And it's what we call a firefighter part. So you can see like the difference in fighting against it versus thank you for being here, and you can thank it and then unburden it and call up another part and or respond differently in these situations because you don't want the consequences of that part anymore. I was wondering, Lauren, if we could break down the different types of parts.
Yeah.
So the firefighter, the manager, the exile, and then the true self energy as well.
Yeah.
Could we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so kind of like what you just mentioned, there's four basic parts and they all kind of work together and they all have their own roles. So obviously protectors, right? Think of them as kind of like the first linemen. They're there to like really protect when there's a threat. So they're going to be responsive, they're going to be reactive, they're going to shut things down, right? Their whole purpose is to make sure that nothing happens bad. Like nothing gets upset, we don't experience stress, everything is good. Then behind that, right, you kind of
So
have,
so hang on, Lauren. So like the addiction is a protective part.
oh,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Because it's helping me not feel bad, right? It's like, yeah, so it's a protective part. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of behind that, right? So like the second lineman is kind of like your managers. And I think of them as literally people with like clipboards being like, okay, we're doing this, like checking things off the list. They're very organized, very structured. They like to keep things intact, nothing out of sorts.
It's like keeping control, kind of.
Yeah, keep it controlled. And then kind of like behind that is you have your firefighters. And so if we think about the movie Inside Out, the angry part who like gets riled up and then explodes, he's kind of like a firefighter. He keeps everything bottled up, he fights all the fires out, but when things get too big, too fast, and we can't handle it, we have to explode in some way to relieve the stress, the tension, the emotions that we're feeling. And typically that will show up as like reaction or quote unquote like negative emotions, like shutting down, anger, resentment, um, guilt, and shame. And their whole purpose is to not let an exile show up. And so that leads us to our last, right? The exiles. And those are our most of the time they're like our child parts, but they're the ones that have been traumatized and have been through a lot of hard things. And they've kind of been stuffed aside and put in a dark corner and told, don't come out because you're scary, you're not okay, we can handle it from here. And
It's
when,
like your deepest, darkest shame,
It's the
yeah,
deepest wounds.
deepest
yeah, your
wounds that you've
deepest
had.
wounds, the trauma, the experiences that you've been in, they're attached to your core beliefs, right? So I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable. And it typically will go back to like events that have happened in your childhood where you're first learning things about the world and about yourself. And the body's whole purpose with parts is to make sure that our exiles do not leave that corner. Because if the exile leaves the corner, we have no idea what's going to
They're going
happen.
to get hurt
Right?
worse.
Yeah, we're going to hurt. We might like, end up in a scary situation. The world's going to end. Like it's very like big deal energy of this can't happen because we have no idea how the body is going to respond and we're not willing to risk that. Um, and contrary to that, right? Our body is so nervous about these exiles stepping forward that parts, like addiction parts, will be formed and will show up in our life and still contribute to negative consequences, unknowing that they're actually really causing any harm, right? Their purpose is to keep you safe and to make sure that you don't feel discomfort or feel shame or feel uncomfortable, but really the consequences still can negatively affect us and cause us pain too.
Okay, so if just to kind of maybe go with an example here, we could pick either side of say being betrayed or having an addiction or something. Theoretically, with what you just said, down at the core is some set of exiles.
Mhm.
Let's say my need, like maybe I got made fun of for failing my spelling tests every single week in grade school, and so I feel like I'm stupid. So then that's an exile part
Yeah.
that then learns to be protected by a part that acts like they know it all the time and has to have all the answers.
Manager.
That's a manager, or might be some kind of a protector that kind of keeps people at arm's length.
Mhm.
And then if somebody starts to challenge you, that says, "Hey, Tyler, like I don't think you actually know your facts on that," then I might have a firefighter come up that's
Mhm.
like wants to argue with them or fight with them or make a distraction so that I don't get put on the spot.
Mhm.
And almost it's almost worth it to make a scene rather than be shown that I'm actually stupid.
100%.
And so that's the firefighter part.
Yeah.
Let me give another example. I like examples because that was really good, Tyler. Like you could see it there. Um, so let's take betrayal, something we see all the time. Somebody's been hurt, they've been betrayed, and so they start like trying to be loved and seen, and they have a lot of sex with their partner, and they just like want them to want them. That right there would be a firefighter, right? But they also go off and they start managing things. They start trying to lose a lot of weight or dress a certain way or look a certain way. So they manage the
Or
situation
check the
because,
history or whatever.
right? And deep down, dad cheated on mom when they were 6 years old and left the family, and they're terrified of rejection and abandonment. And so there's the exile part. So you can see the firefighters, all the protect. So firefighters and managers are protective parts.
Mhm.
You can see them all just going all around to not get close to that little girl who is so terrified of abandonment and rejection. And we all live this way. Like we all live this way in so many different ways. It's like,
Sometimes subconsciously, Brannon, a lot
yeah,
subconsciously.
yeah. Your spouse gives you the wrong look and you shut down. You're subconsciously managing that situation with your shutdown part. Hi, shutdown part.
Mhm.
Thank you for taking care of me, right? Or you're scared that your spouse is going to not love you, so you're complying all the time and showing them what a good person you are. Hi, manager part, right? So you can see it everywhere, and we all do it all the time, right,
Mhm.
Lauren?
Yeah, all the time. And really, I mean, Tyler, you kind of just said it is we do it subconsciously. And honestly, we do it all the time. Like 90% of us do it subconsciously, myself included. And the whole point of IFS is to bring it from subconscious to more conscious. So that on the times when we've been subconscious, 90% of the time, maybe we'll be 50% subconscious and then 40 and then 30, right? I think since we're always growing as humans, like we're always going to be developing our parts and we're always going to be growing. So I don't think you'll be 100% like self-actualized. I don't think that's realistic. But the whole point is to get as close as you possibly can that feels comfortable and feels loving and feels that self-growth, and I am the person that I am in this moment, and I'm okay with that. And I'll be happy with the person that I am tomorrow as well.
That's awesome. So there's another part that we haven't really got to yet that I think is where you're starting to move towards as it relates to, I guess I'm wondering that idea of expanding mindfulness, awareness, consciousness, compassion, curiosity. What that's really doing is developing, I think, this other last part. And can you talk a little bit more about the self as it
Yes.
relates to like IFS?
Yes, the self. And I can give like an example. So I was kind of taught by some other therapists that like self energy, right, is at the core and the key of IFS. That's what we want to achieve and touch upon throughout the day as much as possible. Self energy, there's like the 8 C's of when you have like self love and self energy, and it's calmness, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. I cannot remember those all at
Me
once.
neither.
It's too much.
I'll admit I just Googled it,
I did
I
before.
knew it was 8 C's.
I
The eight
know.
It's
C's.
always C's, you know.
Uh,
C's have great words.
it's great. So, right, like in the moment, if you filled all 8 of those, right, you would have self energy. And so they kind of explained it as your self is born, and this can be correlated to whatever your belief is, but I'll just give the example of like self energy is like your soul. It's a bright light when you're born. And then throughout your life, clouds, kind of like if you were the sun, get in the way because of things that you've been learning and teaching and taught about yourself. And some of the clouds can be really, really dark, and some can just be gray. But we develop and we age as adults, and sometimes we don't really feel like any sunlight is shining through, or maybe there's like a few rays, but they're really blocked by the clouds. And so parts work is working through like knowing what clouds are what, making it feel safe for them to move aside so that more self energy, more light, more sunshine can shine through. And that's when you feel like the most you at your deepest core, where your core beliefs aren't present, where there's no negative self-talk or thoughts. You are simply you. And it can be it's a really beautiful feeling. And Brandon and I remember we got trained by Dick Scott, and like I remember when he was doing it with one of our therapists, and he was like, give me like 5 seconds to like get into self energy. And you could literally like see it. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like he just he just embodied it. Like he just looked calm and at peace and was just like happy to be here. And you could just tell. So it's almost like an energy shift as well that I feel like people can notice. And I think it's nice. It's nice to see.
I think as you're talking, it's like confusing what you're talking about, and yet everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's groundedness. You're centered. You're in your integrity, and you're ultimately you're not letting your ego run the show. You're stepping
Mhm.
into your power, and
Mhm.
your unique, beautiful power with who you are as yourself. So you're not operating in a state of survival or fear isn't running the show, but love is. And so you can show up curious, compassionate, calm, clear, courageous, confident, creative, and connected. I mean, I love those C's because they really drive home what that's like. And when somebody is in that, like in that energy, it's it's safe and it feels good. Um, and so, yeah, the goal is to get conscious of your protected parts and not fight against them,
Mhm.
but learn how to unburden them so that you can call up that self energy and step into it more consistently, and step into your power.
It seems that in some ways the work of integrating all of those protective parts is essential for self energy because sometimes the self energy will need to act from one of those parts places
Mhm.
when it knows that that's the right thing for the right situation, right? So if I have that anxious part and I'm walking, on the trail last week and I almost stepped on a rattlesnake and my body goes boom, like that part should be in the driver's seat in that moment, right? I shouldn't be like have my foot right over the rattlesnake's head and be like,
Firefighter,
well,
whoa.
what's going on right now? Should we step down on that snake's head or not? Like, no, like that part is actually the anxious part is the one that's like, no, get the hell away from that.
Mhm.
And then we'll calm ourselves down and then we'll move into a different part that's going to be in the driver's seat for the time being. And in order to do that, and I'm picturing like Inside Out as you reference that when Joy is dragging sadness and she's like tinking like every single memory, like tink, 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 and they're all turning blue. And then she turns around, she's like panicked. And yet, what really needed to happen for that little girl was to be allowed to have some grief in the midst of these core emotions that are still so amazing. And she needed that part of sadness to be integrated into self
Mhm.
so that sadness could do her part.
Mhm.
Right. And that's to me what I think is the most powerful part of IFS is I'm going to embrace all of those. And then myself is going to learn how to use which one in the driver's seat at the right times.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's meant to so that it doesn't feel chaotic. It's not stressed. You have no idea what's going on, right? Like if you think about in the movie Inside Out, like there's so many times when they're all at the control panel trying to touch different buttons and Joy's like, "Oh my God, what is going on? Like what are you doing?" And she's so confused and she feels at this loss of control, right? So she gets reactive herself and then she goes into this whole tizzy of like, I can't have Riley feel anything but joy. Like she can't feel sadness. She can't feel fear. That's not okay. And then when you jump to the second movie, and for those that are listening, if you haven't seen them, you really should. You get the whole anxious part. And at the end of the movie, this is a spoiler, so sorry. Um, she says, I was just trying to like help Riley. I just wanted to keep her safe. I really love her. And right, and that's the whole embodiment of IFS is the parts when they're in the driver's seat, when they're in the passenger, their whole purpose, regardless of how they're showing up, is to keep you safe because they love you. They want you to survive. They want you to thrive. They want you to feel all the amazing things in life that we all want to. And so when you're able to kind of like put your ego aside and know that I'm reacting this way because my body really loves me and it wants me to feel seen. It wants me to feel heard. It wants me to feel loved. I don't like how it's showing up right now, and that's okay. But I understand that the intention of it is only pure. That self-compassion will lead you miles and give you so much growth than you can even imagine. It sounds so simple, and yet when you do it and you practice it, it's mind-blowing.
I think it also goes against what we're taught in many ways. We're taught that it's good to fight against ourselves. We're taught that it's good to self-reject. Like I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be too sexual. I shouldn't be, all these shoulds that tell us the box that we should fit in. All we're doing is rejecting all these parts, which keeps us unconscious of those parts and doesn't allow us to unburden them and do what you were talking about, Tyler, really harnessing when we want to bring them in or not, because we're in this unconscious state of self-rejection instead, and that comes from a lot of these shoulds that we live in.
That idea of self-rejection, Brannon, I'm going to go back to the rattlesnake for a minute because that actually did happen. And when I got my foot over the top of it before I looked down and saw it, the rattlesnake didn't actually rattle. It should have. It didn't. And my foot was coming down on it and it curled and coiled itself all up. And that's what made me see it is the little bit of movement that was there. And then, like, what is that rattlesnake going to do if that's a part of me? And then I look at it and I go, you're evil. You almost killed me. Like, I've got to kill you now. What's that rattlesnake going to do?
It's gonna bite.
It's going to fight for its life, almost maybe even to taking me out, to killing me. Whereas if I back off and walk around the rattlesnake and acknowledge that it's there, what's it going to do?
That's a great analogy.
It's going to uncoil. It's going to slither itself off the trail under a rock somewhere, and it's going to go and continue to move on with its life.
Mm.
And a lot of times when we go straight up trying to kill those parts, we're actually activating the survival instinct inside the part that then makes us mad at them for doing what anybody would do when they're threatened and feel like they're going to be taken out.
Right.
And so those parts, when they're acting out, a lot of times it's because they're not being seen and they think they're being left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. But by the way, I would have killed the rattlesnake with my bare hands.
I was told, I don't know if this is true or not. I was told that the rattlesnakes are getting like naturally selected differently now, where the non-rattling ones are the ones who are the most dangerous because they
Ooh.
don't warn you anymore. So you're supposed to kill the non-rattling ones and you're supposed to leave the rattling ones.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I don't know if that's
Fascinating.
true or not. So anyway, that's a total side note.
But let's come back to your point because I actually love that point. Is if you acknowledge it and you see it and you understand what it is, then it will calm itself down and it will step away. And isn't it's such a good analogy for our parts? It's like think about it. Like if I got really angry in an argument or something, and the other person keeps saying things that are triggering that anger and just like coming at me, versus if I stopped and said, "Whoa, Brannon, you're really angry. That's interesting. You're really getting amped up." Now I'm acknowledging that thing, that part right there, and I can disarm it. And it when you learn that you can do this, it changes your life. Like it gives you your power back.
Think about doing that in relationships, like in therapy. All three of us have probably had this happen where you got a client who's just coming at you really hard. And if you close up and your jaw sets and you get defensive, then it blows up even further. But what happens when you actually soften your face muscles, open your posture, and be like, wow, sounds like this and this and this must be going on for you? They almost want to stay mad and they can't.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's
You
like,
disarm them.
yeah, yeah, because an emotion that is validated automatically crests itself and starts to decrease.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing with parts work, right? Is when you become self-aware enough to where you feel comfortable to speak out about it with people around you, like, right, you can tell. I kind of like call it like the emotional thermometer, right? It's kind of like the buildup of like your emotions of like, okay, I feel like I'm gonna explode, or I need to leave the conversation, or we need to stop talking right now because I'm not gonna be kind. Um, like doing this gives you way more ability to know, okay, I'm going from 0 to 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, and then be able to speak to your partner or your friend and say, hey, this conversation is really bothering me right now. I feel like I need a little bit of space to go cool down, figure out what I need to talk about. Like, can we come back in an hour and reconvene? Or, hey, that really hurt me in the moment. Like, I'm feeling really hurt right now. And I want to be able to talk about it. That increases your ability to communicate, which one serves you better because most of the time we're going to couples therapy or therapy, not just for emotional regulation, but learn how to communicate to people that, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and not make it a fighting scenario or an attack on one another. I'm simply trying to convey, like, this is what I'm experiencing in this moment. I need you to see me so that we can work through this and so that I can see you. So when you're more self-aware and you can give yourself compassion and you practice that, your ability to be able to do it to others increases by so much. And that's really where you gain that safety and that trust and that compassion, and where you work through the tension and the uncomfortableness of conversations or fights. And it doesn't mean it's like an all or nothing, make it or break it type of scenario anymore. It means we can simply have a conversation and know we both can see each other, we can both be heard, and we can come to a compromise, or we can at least decrease the tension enough to come back to it at another time.
Yes. Love it. It's about validating it, to see it, to disarm it, and you can do it right in the moment with other people. It's amazing. I want to say we're running low on time, and in Tyler, in my when I run the healing journey, there's a section in there that we focus on parts big time. We do parts mapping where the people in my group get very aware of these different parts, different little attributes of the part, like where somatically, where they feel it in their body. What parts is this part friends with? What parts does this part hate? That parts will not like each other. What are common emotions present when that part comes? What are common thoughts that I have when that part is present? And like we get in the weeds with this parts work, and we do the masks, which is the same thing.
That's
And
protective parts.
yeah, or the shame screens or whatever we want to call them. It's all the same thing. So it's an important part of healing trauma is getting conscious so that you can get down to those exiles and do that exile work. And a lot of the exile work that we do is very experiential and somatic.
Mhm.
Um, but I just want to say, like, Lauren's awesome, and she she's one of my first therapists at Therapy Co, and she is for a reason because she's great. And if you want to find her to work with her, you can go to therapyco.org. And then what's your TikTok, Lauren?
Oh God,
You
yeah.
you
Yeah,
got to talk about
I
that.
do. Okay, yes. I have a TikTok. It's a little bit more humanistic, sure. It's called Normalizing Therapy. I also have an Instagram. They're the same exact handle, but it's normalizing_therapy, and you can follow me on there. It's a little bit more me. It's still professional, but I also love the idea that like humans are therapists, and that's the work that I'm.
What?
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
Tyler's a human?
Therapists are humans.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's crazy. But yeah, feel free to follow me on that and interact with my page and all those fun things, and hopefully you find it relatable.
Yeah, and come do therapy with Lauren.
Yeah.
Lauren, I want to just maybe ask you one more question.
Sure.
Um, just thinking about this, there's probably several people who are listening to this and maybe intrigued by IFS or what we've talked about today. There's probably still a lot of questions that are coming up, so they can contact you in those ways. I'm
Totally.
just wondering, you've been doing this work for quite a while, doing IFS, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share some kind of anecdote or story of a client of yours and the changes that actually, why do the work and how does that translate to the day to day?
Yeah. Okay, I have one client that comes to mind. So she actually initially came to me to only do ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy, very similar to EMDR. And after meeting her, I was like, I can totally do that. And I also do this modality. And she's like, nope, I just want to do ART. And I was like, okay. So we start doing it, and we've done ART probably like 5 or 6 sessions, and she's seen movements, she's seen changes. And then at one point, it kind of just like comes to a plateau. And she's like, well, why isn't this working? And I was like, honestly, I think maybe we should like shift gears. Like sometimes doing too much in a row is a little bit much for your body and needs to switch. Would you be willing to try IFS? And she was like, I guess. She was a little hesitant, but I was like, it'll be great. And if you hate it, then we can go back to ART. Um, and immediately, literally after the first session, she was like emailing me with like all these like revelations and talking about it. She read, of course, the No Bad Parts book. And she resonated with it so much because she realized that a lot of the trauma that she was wanting to work through with ART was connected all to her exile parts that she became very fond of, very familiar with. And she was really loving the compassion piece. A lot of her trauma and a lot of the way that she was showing up in relationships was very self-rejection, very wanting to manage, needing to like know everything that's going on. And then the times when she would feel upset and she was wanting to be vulnerable but didn't know how to be vulnerable with her partner, she would self like reject and self isolate and close herself off. And so that was leading to a lot of like shame and guilt and resentment towards herself of, well, why can't I be vulnerable with my partner? Why can't I connect on an emotional level with my kids? Like I want to do that and I see it, but it feels so far away. And so parts work allowed her to really start doing the internal work and having that self-compassion and be able to understand like, oh, I respond this way because this is how my mom responded to me. I see that now. Okay, how can I have compassion for that child part of me that didn't get her needs met? How does that correlate now to my kids showing up? And how can I be there for them the way that I wanted my mom to be there for me? And so it just does like it does it very differently, but I think a lot of people connect with IFS a little bit more than EMDR, ART like right away because it's easier to see, which is one thing, like able to see your parts. And it feels you can get deeper faster. I don't know how to explain it, and I'm probably doing an awful job at explaining it, but it's almost like the shell of who you are just kind of like opens up very nice and very casually. And as a therapist, I do it very like nonchalant, casually, like just like how I'm talking right now, because I feel like that creates some safety and trust easier. And they kind of just like melt into themselves. Whereas ART and EMDR, it's so effective and so amazing, but it's a lot all at once. It really does like rattle your cage a bit to get results. And so I think sometimes like starting this way just eases yourself up into that healing, into that vulnerability that a lot of people when they're coming to therapy don't really know how to do. They don't know how to be vulnerable. It's an uncomfortable emotion. And so that kind of like eases them into the work. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did actually, you did a great job with it, Lauren. And I would maybe just add that it's been my experience that at least the way that my brain works with therapy is that EMDR or ART paired up with IFS is a fabulous combination.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times the EMDR and ART will move, 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 and then you hit that wall, and then IFS will kind of like it's almost like breathing. You're like
You can unburden.
you hit the wall, and then you take your breath out, your out breath again, and then you're like, oh man, I things have moved now again because of
Yeah.
IFS, and now I'm seeing new things that EMDR ART could also help with that somatic part of it, and yeah, that's been my experience that those work really well together. And if you're looking for a therapist, someone who can do both of those things is a great combination.
That's me. I do that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very effective. And I think it's like if you can get your clients on board to try and be willing to do both, which most are, it's just scary and vulnerable. So the trust is
Yeah.
key. You'll get the healing that you're looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense when you're going to the deep trauma with EMDR, ART, that as you're moving, that the protective parts are going to try to shut that down because you're getting too close to the exiles.
Mhm.
And so if you're able to integrate parts work in during that process with EMDR, ART, yeah, I mean it's an awesome combination. I wish there was more research trials done and a bit more structure to how
Mhm.
to implement IFS with ART or EMDR. We might be speaking another language right now. I recognize that. I'll just say this: when we talk about trauma work and we talk about root work healing, these modalities actually get you there, and so you should just come do it. I think everybody should do it. I don't think there's any harm in it, and it only does good. So, Lauren, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. If this is helpful to anybody listening, please, or you know somebody who would benefit from it, please share it, like, subscribe. That's how we're able to reach and help people. And until next time, keep on keeping on.